Welcome to Trench Diaries. This is Blood, Dust and Snow, Chapter 7. July the 13th, 1941. Suddenly, we were taken out of our sleep. Without having time to beautify myself, I am being rushed to the Abteilung. Nobody knows what's going on. Theo, Wilhelm Lope and I use a motorcycle combination to drive into the village. In a relatively clean farmhouse, which has been thoroughly scrubbed by some lancers, they have set up a table with maps and, for seating, placed several folding beds around it. There is also a single bench, and I decide to sit on that instead, thus avoiding the risk of collapsing with one of the readily bed frames. In the meeting, we were now informed that the 5th Company has been disbanded and is to join up with the 7th Company. That means all remaining vehicles will join the 5th, while everything that comes from repair in the future will be collected under Theo, who remains on 5th Company strength. I am ordered to transfer to 7th Company with 2 platoons. I'm shocked. Am I supposed to share the fates of Kleinjung, Möllenberg and Vielbaum? Never. In either way, even if they order me into the 7th Company, I will take the principles of the 5th with me. There will be no quick or a that'll do. We will not be hastened into an untimely but certain death by the gentlemen with the neck pain who then hold empty speeches after my demise. My corpse and those of my men are too valuable for that. I don't give a shit about all the other things they then talk about. I am furious. Bethke told me himself that he doesn't want any more officers of the 5th to transfer as cannon fodder into the badly led 7th Company. But an order is an order, and there's nothing we can do about it. I dare to ask what will happen to Oberleutnant Böttcher, upon which the commander lets me know, leaving me no doubt about it, that I am in no position to ask such questions, and that Böttcher is at his disposal only. Incidentally, Böttcher hasn't even been called to join the meeting. In addition, we learn that Zangenmeister has been transferred to the rear. His nerves, apparently. I head back to the forest when I notice a few comrades of the regimental staff, so I head over to them to say hello. I then try to find Robert Gläser, who is sitting with Hauptmann Saalbach, whose shoulder I decide to cry on. I don't try to hide that I am livid with anger, and he tries to sweeten it for me by explaining to me what an honorable task I have been given. After all, there had been no one else who could effectively replace Oberleutnant Neuling if that was needed. I have enough of it anyway, and thus I say goodbye as quickly as I can. I then drown my anger by guzzling a whole bottle of cognac with Robert, who also supplies me with 2 additional bottles, one for each platoon condemned to leave tomorrow. I'm really grateful to him. We always have a use for schnapps. It raises the low spirits a little. Now, it's time for sleep. July the 14th, 1941. It starts at 0700 in the morning. I report the arrival of me and the rest of the bunch to Neuling, who greets us with some kind words. When he is gone, I relay the best regards of the boss to the boys and share my thoughts about it with all of them. Then we walk to our vehicles and the whole gang roads down the road over which we just recently chased the Russians. Then we arrived at the big Pskov-Luga-Petersburg road and along it towards the north for a good while. On the way, we pass long columns of refugees. After a while, in which our column is bombed several times by Red aircraft, we turn west towards Lake Peipus into the rest area of the 36th Infantry Division. We roll on way too far, however, as the guys there don't know where to marshal us to, and thus we spend several hours rolling aimlessly through the landscape. I am dog-tired. We are in one of those mosquito forests again, and it is difficult to bear. The red fighter bombers are pestering us relentlessly, and we are all suffering enormously. I cope with them a bit better than the others. Maybe I have sour blood, or I might be sweating less. I don't know. I am sitting on the turret and enjoying the high-altitude air. Most of the little pests are in the grass. Time and time again my eyes are falling shut. I had intended to go to bed at 22:30, but then got distracted checking on the platoon's sentry posts. When I finally lay down in the furrow in a field near a forest edge, I could not find any sleep because of the hum of the mosquitoes. The beasts managed to squeeze through the smallest openings. Listening to the cursings and rants of the tormented men, I finally fall asleep. That was about midnight. An hour later I am awoken by stabbing pains. Mosquitoes and fleas are covering uncovered patches of my skin. Big, chunky fleas. We are still in the area of Lake Peipus, and the men again and again ask how far we'll keep going. Are we going from Leningrad to Moscow? When will we arrive in Petersburg? Everyone has got a fresh taste of the local road conditions. Log roads through swamp and log roads across sand. 3 weeks of dust, and even more dust. I can't stand it anymore. Clean your weapons, drive a few kilometers, and suddenly guns and rifles are so dusty they can't fire anymore. Just last Thursday I washed all my black uniform in petrol and managed to clean it pretty well. It took only 2 hours on the following day, and I again looked like a flower merchant. Today's route took us mainly across roads west of the big Mariampol-Petersburg Rollbahn, and they mostly led through sparsely inhabited wood and marshland. We had to have a tank in front of each lorry. There would have been no way they could have traversed the most difficult parts by themselves. Without major breaks, it took us 13.5 hours to cover a distance of 105 kilometers. The boss, who traveled by himself in his own car, arrived only 3 hours earlier. The remainder of the 6th Panzer Division traveled along the same marching route for a while. Just behind Osepo-Yepnoye there was a minefield, and several of our dispatch riders drove into it at the side of the road. It wasn't even possible to recover the maimed and scorched bodies of those boys. The Russians had used wooden mines which couldn't be found with our magnetic detectors. Every step into one of those irregularly laid minefields meant near certain death. July the 15th, 1941. Initially, the plan had been that we, together with the infantry, would form a vanguard in the advance of Leningrad. It's at most 150 kilometers until we reach our objective. I have no idea why they let us sleep until 6 in the morning, but then sleep was desperately needed. There was a thunderstorm in the night and it poured with rain. I do feel sorry for those who didn't set up a tent. We've been surprised by such rain once, and since then we set up a tent whenever possible. Tutash and Stepansky scare out the mosquitoes by smoking some papyrossis or a cigar. After the rainfall, however, the masses of mosquitoes swarmed about. The beasts know how to find even the smallest patch of uncovered skin. Zzz, they land, and then one can hear the distinctive smack of a hand, often followed by some juicy curse. Now, however, we have reached an area where not only the mosquitoes bite. There are clagflies, gadflies from the corpses, and fat horseflies, and all those are determined to stab you. It's not uncommon to see men with swollen hands, cheeks, and eyes. The beasts are everywhere. I hope there are none in Leningrad. Yes, Leningrad. Every soldier is looking forward to this metropolis of Russian Europe, and inwardly I do feel the same. I am looking forward to the end of this period of fighting here in the East. What's going to happen after that, nobody knows. But we'll have reached an important target, and that makes me happy when I speak of Leningrad. The average Lancer, though, is looking forward to more mundane things. Every Lancer in my platoon has by now asked me, "There will surely be schnapps factories in Leningrad, Herr Leutnant, yes? Are there fur shops in Leningrad? Will there be mosquitoes in Leningrad too? We'll finally get food other than pea soup and blood sausage, no? The women here are also dirty. Will they be washed in the big city?" Yes, Leningrad is the objective of dreams of all comrades. We are about 150 kilometers away from it, and progress on the terribly bad advance road is slow. On the main road, Soviet tanks launch a desperate counterattack. It is the only place where they can do so, as everywhere else there are wooden swamps and the bridges across the streams are too weak to carry them. But even on the Rollbahn, the 52-tonners often need to bypass bridges. The 1st Panzer Division has turned left, west is in front of Luga, and the 269th Infantry Division halts the Russian attack, which, according to the intelligence officer of the 36th Infantry Division, is carried forward with strong forces, about 30 kilometers in front of Luga. While I am writing this, Wilhelm Lope has climbed up to meet on the tank. He is in command of the heavy platoon which is attached to the 7th Company. The infantry chaps are mightily impressed by the 3 large tanks. Everywhere our tanks are being photographed. If only there'd been some propaganda company men on the long stretch of sandy road yesterday. They could have shown the people at home that we are not only fighting the enemy over here. They could have a close-up in the newsreels which shows how the enemy ground attack aircraft dive onto their victims who would like nothing more than just a few moments of sleep after a 12-hour drive through dust and heat. They should have filmed all the broken down vehicles which buried themselves more than half a meter deep into the hot sand. Wherever something really interesting happens, the propaganda company is nowhere to be seen. The little cave Z70 with all-wheel steering, which hops across rough swampy ground in such a way that the passengers get seasick when all the steering causes the brakes of our tanks to smoke in narrow turns and when the faces of the tank commanders are caked so thickly with dust that they are incapable of closing their eyes anymore, that they should make films of. Well, I should probably stop moaning now. I haven't taken many photographs myself recently, but then I only have reserve film left. Wilhelm Loeb and I talked about a few general things. The subject of Iron Cross awards is a pressing matter for all of us. I hope the 5th and 7th Company and the platoons of 6th Company who have contributed most to the success of the division won't be gibbed too much when it rains medals the next time around. After all, Bethke managed to squeeze some out for our 5th Company. He also recommended me for the Iron Cross First Class, but if and when I will ever get it, with all those other candidates in the staff, is more than questionable. But I am already happy with Bethke's appreciation, as he is a highly respected and much revered leader, a man who can carry his men along with him. I am looking forward to seeing what Theo Langenbruch will do with the remains of our old lot. I surely don't enjoy serving here with Neuling. The whole mood here is very negative. He only ever looks on the bad side of things and is terribly soft and moody. With his facial expression of constant suffering, he'd make a good tortured Jesus in the Oberammergau Passion play. Yesterday, I apparently addressed him in a harsh tone when I asked him why exactly he chose to camp in a mosquito-ridden forest again and not at the nearby village, which had a water supply. He was clearly miffed about that. The reason is that he is afraid of Russian bombers, which on the day before had dropped some bombs onto that very village, which had resulted in a few dead infantrymen. In the evening, he confronted me about that, and I apologized. I hope this whole thing of having a mixed company attached to an infantry division is over once we reach Leningrad. I can't bear it much longer. And if that results in trouble, I do not care. I don't give a shit about it anymore. Yesterday, the men have, crew by crew, received Russian shirts, genuine rubashkas which are buttoned at the collar and only reach to the bum, a piece of rope around the belly or an old leather belt, trouser legs worn over the boots, ruffle up the hair, and ready is the mushik, which is a Russian peasant farmer. Of course, we immediately took a few photographs of ourselves in that dress. Now, it is nearly 11 and we still have no idea what's happening today. We keep waiting stubbornly. The same day, 16:30 hours. We are marching west towards Lake Peipus. What has happened now is what I never wanted and what Bethke described as total madness. The infantry is requested by platoons and Neuling deploys us in the same manner. It is absolutely sickening. It's always the same old story. The platoon commander and his men find themselves in a tight squeeze. He doesn't know how to help himself with his few tanks and without the fire support of the company, and he's getting shot up as a result. But now there's no more going forward because ahead the Russians have blown up the bridge across the piss-filled ditch in front of Dubrova. The Russians finally seem to have discovered how they can stop a gang like ours. But never mind, pioneers have already rolled to the front where they have built a new bridge. The wooden frames they call bridges here are usually so badly built that they can hardly carry the weight of a Panzer IV anyway. Virtually all of them need reinforcing. We were tasked to capture an airfield at Gedov. Now the bridge is broken, it is now 1815 and we are still standing on the very same spot. By now it has rained and after that I caught some sleep on the turret of tank number 701 with which I am leading the remainder of the company. Here one learns to sleep in any position. We are in the middle of a forest of pines which are growing on the sandy soil. For days now we've been rolling through steppe-type terrain sparsely populated by a few dirty Russians. Woods, swamps, bogs, and always terrible roads. In the winter, the men have been saying that they would rather be with Rommel in Tripoli. A pious hope, which was somehow understandable. By now, however, that tune has changed quite a lot. They say, in Africa, Rommel doesn't have roads as bad as these. Also, the soldiers of Rommel in Africa at least get 5 liters of clean water each day and aren't forced to wait for the field kitchen with hot tea. Without filtering, we can't drink from streams and rivers here. After the day's rain, the thirst doesn't feel as bad and temperatures have also dropped a little. The sun is back, but the roads are not as dusty at the moment. I'm wondering what the roads at Lake Peipus towards the north will look like. That's the advance route we'll be taking, which will then take us even further north of the Gulf of Finland between Kronstadt and Leningrad. There, we'll block everyone who's still trying to get away towards central Russia and Leningrad from the direction of the Baltics and Reval. Now things ahead seem to be moving again. I'll write more later. I'm wondering how far we are going to go today and what our objective of the day is. We have now advanced twice for about 500 meters each time. During the second halt, Stepansky removed a link from the right track of my tank. In the meantime, I have eaten something. 2 sandwiches with cheese and 1 with blood sausage. And it's not even Sunday. Anything but blood sausage is usually reserved for Sundays. Otherwise, the tin stuff, the name of which our boys from Cologne can pronounce so well, is the pillar of our daily meals. Blood sausage in tins, liquefied from the heat of the tank, is usually served in the mornings and evenings, while lunch often consists of pea, lentil or bean soup. That, in turn, has the effect that the air in our tents during the nights is a lot warmer. And it also seems to aid the Lancers' digestion. Woe to those who dare to go deeper than 15 meters into the woods alongside our routes of advance and get lost in a maze of paper and fly-covered little piles. One can easily find the advancing army. Just follow the smell. We are now near a village called Giloshki. The stream which is flowing here is called Pliosa. There are houses on our left, and they have a surprisingly clean, well-kept and peaceful appearance. They are, however, all slightly wonky. That especially applies to the only non-combustible elements of them, the chimneys, which are all curved, bent, and are slowly slipping out of position. We are now across the bridge. The Russians had set fire to it after dousing it with petrol. There wasn't much left of it. The bridgehead on the other side has been well reinforced, foxholes everywhere. A few houses are still burning. A lorry is standing at the roadside and is flying the breakdown flag, and 2 infantrymen are waving to us. We think they want us to tow them away, but when we drive over, they just want to hand 3 bottles of vodka up to us. I am very moved. How nice of them. We have gained a very good reputation with the infantry, apparently. The same day, 19:15 hours. A shame that I didn't manage to take a swim in Lake Peipus. The wind is blowing from the north and it is quite cold. The water is freezing and one can be happy not to have been forced to swim through it involuntarily as the Russians were. Yes, together with the 36th Infantry Division, we have chased the Russians into the lake. Since yesterday, some of them have been trying to get across on small boats. We had dispersed Russian forces in front of Gedov and had taken a large number of them prisoner when they were trying to flee on the road leading to Narva. Now, I am sitting here while our tanks are being repaired. From the 22 tanks we had at Yamkino, 5 were still running this morning. July 18th, 1941. We have withdrawn back to Gora, a village at the lake which is also home to the staff of the 36th Infantry Division. I'm wondering why there are no of those little ground attack planes here, but I guess that the cold north wind has chased our little friends away for the time being. But now I will write about what happened after we had crossed the destroyed bridges yesterday. On July the 16th we left the woods behind the lake at Alfonsovo at 0200. Neuling buggered off and left me in command of the rabble. Poppelreuter was further ahead with the infantry vanguard. We had only put 3 vehicles on the road when suddenly everything halted and we had to wait until 0500 until we slowly crept forward again. Another kilometer and the waiting started again. At 0800 hours we are a few kilometers away from Cheremenchima. Neuling's Gradmelder arrives and calls forward to the front. There is shooting ahead and the artillery is firing as well. Poppelreuter's platoon is somewhere in the village which one can see ahead. We are sent to secure the reverse slope position on the left side of the road in front of the village. Further to the right is Matusek with 2 Panzer IVs. With me, I have 3 tanks myself, Feldwebel Ulrich with his 3 Skodas and Reubers Panzer IV. We secure the road to the village towards the left where we perceive Russian activity. I've just positioned my vehicles when I see a thick pillar of smoke rising up on the right where Matosek has headed with his platoon. What happened? Then we see Matosek with his driver Esser walking back on foot. What are you doing here? Well, that's our tank burning up there. They fired a few rounds right into it. Damn. Has everyone managed to bail out? Yes, only it's tragic, all our stuff is still in there. I feel for him. Matosek had driven up the hill on the right side of the road when suddenly he received machine gun fire from a distance of about 1,000 meters. At that moment, Matosek was outside walking ahead of his tank to guide it over difficult terrain while another member of the crew was walking behind it. And just as Matosek turned around to see where the machine gun was firing from, the first anti-tank shell hits the ground nearby. He and his men jump into cover while Esser, still driving the tank, is continuing to roll forward. A second AT shell hits the track, enough of a threat to make the 2 men still inside the tank bail out and dive into the high grass. In the next seconds, 4 more AT shells hit and the Skoda goes up in flames. As the Russian machine gun was still firing, the 2 had crawled back to the reverse slope. 2 more pillars of smoke rise up from the edge of the village. Through my binoculars I can see nothing, but I soon learn that 2 tanks of our vanguard were too daring and had driven too far forward. Through my glasses I can see 2 more of our tanks in cover on our side of the village. Soon after, I spot some of our men carrying a stretcher. On it lies a man with a black tank uniform. I have no idea what has happened. For now, we are called off the hill and are to advance to the next village together with the infantry. I am tasked to lead the assembly. 9 Skodas and 3 Panzer IVs without the Oberleutnant platoon. I will be responsible for all this lot while the company commander, so-called, stays at the regimental command post and will stay in radio contact with me. Why he is not coming with us, I don't know. Well, never mind. The advance stalls, tanks are called to the front. I am driving Ulrich's tank while he is driving in mine. Ulrich made a calm and very good impression on me. I don't quite understand why Neuling calls him anxious. To evade a minefield, we roll past between the houses of the village, avoiding the main road. In front, everything stops. Because Neuling hasn't briefed me at all about the situation, I get out of the tank to take a look myself and ask the commander of the infantry who is lying among some of his men in a roadside ditch. He doesn't have time to talk to a lowly lieutenant, however, as just at that moment Russian projectiles whistle over our heads and we are also fired upon from the left and right side of the road. I'm still not entirely sure what is happening and ask an older Lancer who tells me that the Russians are counter-attacking and that both German companies have now been fighting there for 2 days and have run out of ammunition. Our tanks were badly needed. On my stomach I crawl back to the tank and am unable to avoid crawling over the torn up Russian corpses while I am doing so. I shout to the loader to open the hatch and carefully lift it upwards. A deep breath and then 1, 2, 3, jump up, fold the long legs into the turret and let the body slide down behind them. Then I pull my head in just at the moment when a volley of small arms fire hails down on us. As long as there are no anti-tank guns around, however, everything should be fine. Raging rifle fire ahead. In addition, Russian artillery is now plastering those 300 meters of the village between us and our infantry on the other side, exactly that stretch of ground which we now have to cover. But that's how it is, so Panzer Marsch. Vanguard, half left through the rye field. Remainder, fan out to the left of the line, ready to fire, advancing Russian infantry ahead. Care when crossing through our infantry line, Panzer Marsch and attack. We cross through the thin line of our infantry who wave to us enthusiastically. I liaise with an infantry officer who tells me that the Russians had attacked in enormous numbers and that he had never seen anything like it. Now, however, their attacks had stalled. In the end, it only takes a few 7.5 centimeter shells and a few shots from our Skodas and the Russians start running. It's the usual scene. Some of our machine guns are hammering into those who try to run into the forest on the left, while our Panzer IVs are sending shell after shell into the undergrowth on the right into which most of the brothers are trying to escape. It's utter chaos. Bellowing cattle are running around, and one by one the houses go up in flames. Wherever something moves, our tank machine gun is scything everything and everyone down. Nothing is staying alive. In that manner, we stood there for quite a while. By noon it has become a bit more quiet, and with the means of communication available to me, I try to contact the Oberleutnant by radio, but not a single ass is answering. Wilhelm Lope can understand me well, so it can't be my radio. We try for more than 90 minutes, but no reply from Neuling. The only thing I can hear is the angry voice of Wilhelm emitting a stream of insults and obscenities. In the end, I gave up. The infantry has by then been supplied with ammunition. I intend to continue leading the men without being hindered by the incompetence of the boss. At 1600, our artillery opened fire on the edge of the village ahead of us to suppress enemy anti-tank guns. At the same time, we followed the advance of our infantry, overtaking them before exiting the village. The artillery then shifted its fire further into the forest ahead. It all went smoothly in a textbook manner. In the forest we found a dead Russian major and took a large amount of documents from his body, one being a fire plan of their own artillery. We also pull a few prisoners from the undergrowth. They don't want to answer any questions, so we sent the scum off to the rear. On the way, we surprised a few Russians who seemed to have tried to get to us armed with explosives, incendiaries and tar mixed with petrol. The black piping on their dead bodies indicates that they were engineers. Behind the village is a road through the forest. I didn't want to cross that without pioneer support, so I lined my boys up in a line, drove 1 kilometer forward and stubbornly waited for a pioneer who could check the area ahead for mines. I will not risk losing any vehicles through mines. 3 shot up and burned out tanks are enough for today. When we reached Lipyagi, we turned left into an open field to help the infantry get past the still burning village. They were very grateful to have our tanks to support them. The infantry then headed towards the railway line running alongside Lake Pipers and the Godov-Nava road. We were right behind their lead elements when they suddenly stopped and called us further forward to take fleeing columns of Russian infantry under fire. There were several burning lorries and groups of Russian infantry running towards the lake. We had just crossed over the railway line when we received a report that a transport train was heading towards us from Narva. This appeared soon afterwards, so we swing our turrets around and give them hell. Russian troops jump off the wagons while it rolls past, and we open up on them with cannon and machine guns. Wilhelm Lope is overjoyed. That's a proper feast for him. With his cannon, he fires a few shells into the locomotive, steam shoots out of the boiler. We finish that one off very nicely. We are soon standing at Vershalyani. Lope and his tank and Barnek with his 3 Skodas are with me. When we get further towards the lake, the infantry continues to advance alone and takes possession of the airfield. And once again the action is picking up. Besides that, I find it most interesting that the beginning of the lack of supplies is already apparent, and it is only July of 1941. We hear about the infantry not getting ammo and the tank boys only receiving soup and not much water. That is quite foreboding, as you know. I also like how our author is not holding back when it comes to competence or incompetence among his peers. I'm sure that will get him into trouble at some point later. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you again in the next episode. Cheers.